You know,
They're
Colin,
in
how are you doing?
I don't know if we're gonna get
You're the one that we want to, you're the person who's counsel.
They look at their,
What's his birth? My girl.
the end report, the end result.
So at the
We're still going over this thing with,
we're in
decide on that yet, haven't you? No, I'm not looking for lunch. What are you doing for lunch? Are they giving us lunch? I want to look at it. They're reporting. Half hour isn't even time to leave the building.
Oh, thank you.
It's very
I have to leave and
short.
the water by 1 o'clock.
All right, good morning, all. This is gonna be another confusing meeting like it is, but we're gonna make some changes today that I hope you all approve, and, it's come to, I'm gonna start, how do we open this now? Let's open it under the, well, I wanna get the mayor in. How about we do O&M first? All right, 'cause I have to explain that something, okay? So we're gonna do, the park O&M first. You have your agenda on that. And before I start the meeting and ask for approval in minutes, I just wanna explain something so that I don't defend or get some supervisors upset and, mad at me for something that I'm changing. But it came to our attention, Kevin knows about that, he wasn't able to be here today, but he knows about it. What happened with this O&M, it got started 5-6 years ago when we started with the Charliewood, park and all the, work that the mayor has done and getting grants. And what happens is that the Village of Lake George owns basically 1/3, I'll use that number of that park, and the county owns 2/3. And there's a resolution that was done, in 2012, and to keep it fair for them is that they had 2 voting entities on their 1/3, and the county had 4 voting entities on our 2/3. And with the new changes of all these committee, the O&M is not gonna be under tourism anymore, and we're gonna knock, not that I shouldn't use that word, we're gonna eliminate some of the people and go back to the original committee if we can. So I'm not offending anybody that's been on here, and that we're gonna take you off next month. You're welcome to come and sit on the sides, but we have to get back to that 6-member, operation of that park. Because to have 11 or 12 of us voting and only 2 of them able to vote, it is unbalanced, and it's, by legislation, it was put in that way, and we never realized it. Yes, Jeff?
I have copies of that resolution.
Yeah, okay, you can pass them out to everybody. So, I mean, so next month, when you see O&M, it'll probably be on another day, or maybe at the end of a tourism meeting, but it'll only be probably 4 or 5 supervisors, and Jeff, and, the 2 representatives from Glen, the Village of Glens Falls.
Okay, thanks.
So does everybody understand what I'm trying to say? So I don't want anybody to get offended that I'm not kicking anybody off the committee, but we have to get it back to this small functioning group, because it's just fairer for the village. And believe it or not, it's easier to talk of finances and how much we're spending for lawn mowers and this and that and fences at the park. Yes?
So who is on it?
I haven't decided yet. I gotta get a list of the original ones, and that's what I'm gonna try to go back to. But, you know, I will talk to anybody that really wants to be on it, and we can work it out, okay? So, I'll
Okay.
try to make it as fair. So next month's meeting will be at probably even a different time, or at the end of a tourism meeting, but everybody will have to get off the table just for, and we gotta get Mr. Mayor at the table, you know? He should be sitting at our table, so. All right, so everybody understand that?
Should be,
Now
sir.
I'll open the meeting, and vote on the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I get a motion, Ms. Wood, Mr. Dickinson, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're gonna have the, park O&M. Jeff, you wanna start with what you got there? 'Cause we don't even have enough seats in here, but
Do you wanna pass this resolution?
well, we'll do that at the end of this meeting. I just wanna get, this going here.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. On the page 1 of the agenda is a resolution request to cover certain expenses at the park. You'll see I've included invoices from the village, and, they include, expense to install a propane tank and the initial fill on that tank for the restroom building. And then you'll also see, towards the end of the packet on page 5 and 6, reimbursement for a telephone charge. We've been, in a process of, taking over the utility costs and putting them into the county's name so that I can pay them directly out of the park O&M budget, which is already combined village and county funds of revenue coming into that operating budget. This, the telephone is gonna remain in the village's name until that expires, that contract expires in April, and then we'll be bringing it under the county's name. But rather than contract with a new vendor that we don't use now, we talked about it, I talked about it with my fiscal manager, and I think the village agreed to hold that contract for now. We'll just reimburse them, and then once it expires, we'll bring it into a county, I'll be consulting with the county IT department on how to proceed with the telephone service there. So the resolution request is to reimburse, the village for a total of, I think there might be an error in that code, but, I see two numbers that are different, 423.59 and 439.59. You know, Amanda, I know you talked to us on that. The total amount for the invoice is attached. And it's approximately, it's a little over $400, $440.
442, did you say? Jeff, 442?
I can add them up here real quick.
Gene, I'd like to make a motion, we pay that no matter what it is.
Okay, well, let's get a number for the record. I agree with that, but let's,
$423.59.
$423.59.
$423.59.
So you're making a motion to pay $453.29. Do I get a second? Do I see a hand up? Matt, okay. Any other questions on those bills? Mayor, any questions on the bill? I guess not. Okay. We'll get you at the table here soon, Mr. Mayor. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's passed. What else you got, Jeff?
Under the referral items, I think we agreed to take that off, and I failed to do that on the agenda last month when we talked about our handling of deposits. So that's been resolved. And then the last item, I had talked with Dave Harrington from the village, earlier in last week, and, he had discussed doing some purchasing of equipment to be stationed right on site that we could store in the utility area of that restroom building. He had mentioned, the discussion from last month regarding a golf cart, which they've gone ahead and gotten some quotes on, but also a push mower, a string trimmer, and then just an array of hand tools. And, I hadn't followed up with David. He was gonna put together a list, but I don't know if the mayor has anything at this point. I think it's something that we can talk about next month, but our intent would be to, establish a tool room in that utility area of the restroom, so that the village forces will still come down and do maintenance, but they won't have to load up their tools every time and then bring them back every time. They can have at least the normal routine equipment on hand. So we'll come back to committee next month. Hopefully we'll have that list together.
Anybody have any other questions? I'll open it to the floor. Any questions? All right. So now we'll go back to the last thing, to make a motion that we move this committee back to the way the,
Are you taking this back to make it a subcommittee again, like it used to be?
I think we have to, yeah.
Okay, then you won't need a motion because the chairman of the board.
Okay, so we won't, but, so when you don't get your name on the O&M next month, don't feel insulted. But I'll come up, I'll speak to the chairman, see who he wants on it, and then, we'll try to get back to the original, or maybe throw in some new people. So everybody understands that. All right, a motion to adjourn the, O&M. Okay, we got it. John, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, John, Matt, okay, thank you. I'm half blind, believe me, guys, you gotta help me with that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's adjourned. Next one we're gonna move to, because it's a short one, is the tax. Got a couple of things that came to our attention, so we don't have to approve the minutes, that stays with everything, okay. One, I'm gonna have Jeff is here from the Civic Center. We had told him that they didn't have to make a report, and he didn't have to be here, but he came this morning. I really appreciate it, because, as you all, most of us are here at the meeting Friday, about getting the tourism name up at the Civic Center. And, Jeff came, and he's gonna explain to us what they can help us with, and what we're gonna move forward with.
Well, Thanks for letting me come today, I'm not sure. Just, obviously, I read the article in the paper, like I'm sure y'all did, or you were here Friday night. But is there any, promotional materials or banners or permanent signage inside the Civic Center that we can put up for Warren County? We're happy to do that, of course. And I'll work with Gene and go ahead and do that, what's appropriate. And, certainly you've all seen the marquee, and for big, county events, Americade, Balloon Festival, or, whatever is appropriate, we'd be more than happy to put up, those events on our marquee to help promote it. So obviously, you all give us a lot of money for, to promote the Civic Center, so obviously, seems like a no-brainer for us to, give back whenever we can, so, for obviously little things like this, so, pretty much, whatever you need, we're happy to help promote Warren County tourism in Saddleville.
All right, Jeff and Joanne are gonna be working on that together, so, we'll let you know as we're going along what we've done. Thank you for coming, Jeff.
Thank you all. Have a good
Appreciate
day.
it. All right, we'll move into the treasurer's report.
Good morning, everybody. This is kind of a bare bones report because we're still trying to get everything caught up. But we're up about 8.2% in collections from this time last year. I would like to caution, though, after talking with a lot of the people in the industry, I don't want people to think that this 8.29% increase in occupancy tax is because we've got all these more people coming here. This, I think, is more reflective of increase in rates, and we're not seeing quite as many people coming as we have. And the reason I want to bring this up is that at some point in time, the rates are not going to be able to go any higher. People will not come if they get to a certain point. So we're kind of this is kind of this goes along with what you're trying to do, Mr. Chairman, as far as revamping and trying to recalculate how we're doing tourism, because I'm not trying to sound the bell that there's a major problem, but I just want you to understand that this increase is not totally because we got more people coming, it's because the properties are collecting more rent. They're collecting more in their beds. Just to let you know on that. Any questions?
Yes.
I'm just wondering maybe what your observation was on Supervisor Beatty's recommendation relative to using occupancy tax money to go against invasive species. I don't know what your thoughts would be, Dennis. Seemed like a logical, since Lake George really drives the tourist industry.
Well, to answer your question, my personal feeling on this is yes, it should. For some reason, the invasive species wipe out Lake George or Schroon Lake or Loon Lake or any of those places. I mean, we're going to see a dramatic loss of money, period. And if there's, let's say along Lake George, if there's a 20% drop in the assessed values along Lake George because the lake is no longer usable, everybody's going to have to pay to make that up. The guy living on 5th Street in Glens Falls, the guy living up on the top of the mountain in Johnsburg, everybody's going to have to make that up. So my personal feeling is that this is an ongoing, it'll never end saga of invasive species, because as soon as you get one under control, another one is going to come along, and it needs to be addressed. And occupancy tax, I think, is a good place to get that funding for. Anything else? Thank you.
I got one question too, because you know me, I always, if the occupancy tax is up because the room rates are up, how come sales tax is not up?
Pardon me?
How come sales tax is not up? Because
gas
sales
is up.
taxes, they also have to do on that higher price.
The big factor with
It is
sales tax, I believe, is the gas.
I think that's what it is.
Unfortunately, the state never gives us exactly what goes on with that, but my feeling is just looking at it and talking to them from NISAC, that 18 to 20% of your sales tax is attributable to gas. So, I mean, we're down, half what it was a while ago? So that's quite a bit of sales tax loss right there.
Okay, that's good.
I'd like to go on record, though, to dispel the notion that this is an underperforming year with regard to demand for rooms. Our industry travel reports that surmise the whole area, the individual properties report to them. Some of the major properties report to them. We have had the best demand in the last 5 years, past year.
Well, you know, I
I
just
brought that
talked to
up.
several of the property owners, and they have said that their increase, the big increase, because an 8.2% increase is extremely above average. We normally do 1.5% to 2%, and so what I'm trying to say is that it's not attributable totally to demand, it's attributable to an increase in rates.
But the demand is the highest it's ever been right
Well,
now, so that's.
Maybe I did not do a bona fide study, I just talked with several of the property owners.
No, I just want to make it clear that while some properties may be down, and that is unfortunate, the overall health of the county is up considerably.
The report that we receive at the department is reflective of all of the properties that buy into the Smith Travel report. So I think if there's an individual property, they may see the results for themselves and some of their peers within that set, but we have the results for all of those properties. So they may not have access, they don't have access to this report. So those are the numbers that we're looking at. And we can see the room rates are increasing a little bit, but we're also seeing the occupancy numbers and the demand numbers, so they're good, solid numbers, too.
Well, that's good then.
Mr. Dickinson?
I'm gonna respond on occupancy tax issue as Peter asked. Occupancy tax is really meant for promotion. And if you go back to the very beginning, that's what it says. That all of it is supposed to be spent promoting Warren County. Now, if you get the 3/4 of an inch stack of amendments to that original law, we're spending on everything. Whether or not we should be doing that is the issue, and I'm a little nervous about simply saying that we should use occupancy tax to fight invasive species. We're treading on thin ice, as thin as they have it in Bolton. I'd be very hesitant before we jump on that boat. We really need to discuss this and make sure that.
I agree, I think a lot of us agree with that, because if you attack that amount of money every year, eventually I know we got a big surplus right now, but eventually the surplus drops, and then, we're back at the bottom again, and that's what I worry about, so. Rachel, yes?
I previously had a discussion with our previous county attorney, Martin Afferty, regarding this. It must have been when I first was learning about OCTAX and the scheduling guidelines, and he had shared with me he wasn't sure if it was an allowable expense or not under our current local law. So I'm just wondering, can we kick this over to the county attorney's office for some type of interpretation?
We're going to do that, because we have to take that back and let's look at it again, because it's been amended so many times that a lot of people from the time it started till now don't know all the amendments. But I think it's a great idea, and we're going to have to look at what we can spend it on, because we are stretching the boundaries a little bit in that gray, what I'll call gray area, to what we can spend it on.
So specifically regarding the invasive species,
well, about the whole thing, I think it's time, the committee should sit down and kind of look at all of it and see what the law is, what we can do and what we can't do. All right, well, I gotta go on with my meeting. I can give you a little time at the bottom. On an agenda part here, on number 4, we were notified, there was a, misunderstanding, I just don't know, and back in 2014, we gave the Balloon Festival $15,000 extra out of the tourism budget, to help them get through that year with their expenses and all. And it just came to my attention last week early that they were under the assumption we were going to give them $15,000 a year, each year, on top of the amount of money they get from bed tax. So what they're looking for is what's happened. It wasn't put in the 2015 tourism budget, and now it isn't put in the 2016 tourism budget. And what they're looking for is to go back and see if they can get that $15,000 for the next, last year and this year, so that they can finish up on their budget. Do you have their budget again? You gave it to me, and I don't want that copy of their budget.
Is this occupancy tax that we got that $15,000 from?
Yeah. Well, occupancy tax went into the tourism budget to pay it out of the tourism budget. Oh, I got it, all right. All right, just,
He took it
this
out.
is a 2015 budget from the Balloon Festival. Their revenues were 170,565, but their debt was 188,862. So they are short 18,297. That's what made them come up to see that it wasn't, they weren't getting that 15 to cover this debt here.
Well, jog my memory, how much did they get from Octax?
They got 25,000 from the Octax committee, and then another 15,000 through the tourism budget.
Right, okay.
And then 15 from Queensbury. Well, that's on here.
Yeah.
15 from what?
Yeah,
What'd you say, John?
yeah. Queensbury also gave them 15. That's in that 170,000 total. So they're doing all right with Octax money.
What did they do? What did we give them last year?
Same thing, 25 from the tourism, but we didn't give them the 15.
And
Well,
we
it
did-
wasn't in the tourism budget,
And
excuse
we
me.
didn't give them the 15 because they didn't request it?
That's the problem. They were under the assumption that it was rolled over every year, but the resolution doesn't show that. Yes, Fred, you can,
There was a meeting, to refresh everybody's memory, in 2014. I was brought into it because I was a liaison for the Balloon Festival at the airport. Supervisor Kenny, administrator were there, et cetera. The Balloon Festival was upset, I would believe, because the maximum Octax you get is 35,000, they got 25. They came with their argument that the promotional value that the Balloon Festival gives the county is priceless. The Weather Channel coming, doing live remotes, et cetera. They talked about, posters in the subways in New York City, et cetera, that's all invaluable, and they don't get rewarded for that because Supervisor Kenny, with his statistics, shows that heads and beds don't compare to Americade and several other events, but they believed that they were entitled to more money. So in that meeting with the powers to be, we asked, well, what are you looking for? And he said, well, he's very transparent, he puts his budget before us, he says, I need 15,000 more. I made the recommendation that possibly we are collecting parking fees to offset our overtime, but Supervisor Kenny said that there is promotional money in tourism budget, and it would be better to come out of there because that's what we do with the Balloon Festival. We get a lot of promotional value out of it, so we give the $15,000 out of there. Mr. Dunham, who left that meeting, surmising that he would get that money subsequent years to come. And that, I guess, wasn't nailed down, and that presented a problem. In 14, he got it, 15, it didn't show up, and he just contacted us at the end of 15 or 16. He certainly wants it in 2016. The administrator researches says that we certainly can't make it retroactive, but what we could do is give him 30 this year to give him the money he needed last year that he was counting on, that through omissions or whatever, we didn't have a detente meeting like we did in 2014, and then that would clear up the issue. But that's the way I understood it, and that's the way we're trying to move forward with it.
What's your take, Mr. Financier?
Did they incorporate the 15 request into their request to the county this year?
no. Well, right now they're bringing it up.
No. Back when we reviewed all of the events that were eligible for reimbursement out of the county allocation, right? The 200 and...
They did the
What ended up being
the 25,000 is what they came
225,000.
forward.
Did they make that request at
Right.
that
No,
time?
when it came to light was when they submitted their 2015 voucher for the 25,000, and then he called and asked, well, where's my $15,000 voucher? And I researched it, and the resolution and the contract were very specific that it was just for the 1 year, so no. When he submitted his application for 2016, it was not included.
It's not included, but to be fair, is the reason it wasn't included, because he believed that it was a separate, some other
I believe that's right.
some other source,
Well, it is.
Yeah, he is,
and that he,
correct.
so that's where the confusion arose.
Yeah, I just assumed that 15 that they gave, we gave him in 2014 would just continue each year, so he didn't have to apply for it.
It would be best going forward, I mean, that whatever the request is submitted as the request each year to the committee, if you see what I'm saying, as opposed to this bifurcated kind of,
Well, it'd have to be earlier so that goes in the tourism budget. See, we have to put it in our budget, tourism, and then request the funds.
right, what I'm saying is I think it should be incorporated into their request for funding, like all of the other organizations, so that if in fact the request they're making is for 35, that's the request.
Yeah, but they're asking for 25 from Octax and 15 from promotional out of tourism.
Right, but what I'm saying to you is that better they, going forward, better they come to the committee and ask for 40, is my point, than this bifurcated approach, because any organization that does promotion could also request a bifurcated approach like this, right? Americade could request it, any of them could. I think,
Don't give me any ideas.
well, I'm just saying, I'm not resolving the issue at hand, although my vote will hopefully help resolve the issue at hand, but I think going forward, I think whatever an activity's request is what the request is.
Yeah, but I agree with what you're saying, but the requests usually come in for beginning of December, late November. But budgets, especially the county budgets for tourism, are made in September and October. So it's gotta be separated, and I think that's why.
Well, I don't think that's not to be putting words in Ron's mouth, that's not what he's saying. I think he's saying that they should ask for the whole amount from the event money and not keep coming back to the tourism department. Correct?
I think the decision for funding should be made comprehensively at one moment in time when we're reviewing all of the applications and trying to balance demands that are greater than the resources that are available. I think that we run the risk of creating a separate activity line that frankly any activity. So I would rather they come in, I'm not saying we would approve it, but I'm not saying I'd rather have them come in and ask for 40.
All right, well, we got a lot of hands. Let's start, Mr. Gerard.
I think simply put is, they wanted the maximum from Octax, 35. So put it back in your lap. You didn't give them 35, you gave them 25. They were quite upset, okay? It was a pretty volatile meeting. There was even discussions about moving the Balloon Fest. We didn't want to get into that. We liked the Balloon Fest. We realized the benefits of it. He pointed out the promotional values that it offers that don't come into play when you're looking for Octax. Because Octax is putting heads and beds. That's why they went from 35 to 25. So we found a way, us, not him and his requesting, we found a way to give him his 15 that he needed, to set the table level and continue the Balloon Fest in the form and manner that we've been likened to. So there was promotional money, in other words, that is more discretionary in tourism, but evidently it didn't get put in there. So there's where, it's our system that is flawed. He needs that money to move forward. If we want to change something, I would suggest that tourism meets with Mr. Donahue, because I've been there, done that with Mr. Kenny, and straightens it out. But he convinced me, and collectively we've moved on, and Balloon Fest has done very well, and I bought hook, line, and sinker the promotional value of what the Balloon Fest offers as compared to Americade, or the car show, or Elvis, etc. I bought that package because I think it is a lot more regional in nature and gives us a lot more identity as a county, and that's what he brought to me. But I'm not on the tourism committee, I'm a facilities guy, but Mr. Kenny was in the meeting, who is in charge of the criteria for Octax, which I know is very difficult. So, when you start the domino and change the criteria, you guys are the ones that have to sit and have everyone else do the arguments as to why they shouldn't get more.
Yes, Mr. Leggett.
So what's on the table here? $30,000 is what the Balloon Fest wants in the 2016 appropriation?
In 2016, yes, appropriations.
Okay. And before, the first $15,000 was through contract, right? Something was drawn up.
In 2014.
In 2014. So with contracts, they're in the file, so a person, an administrator, would pull out and see that this contract has lapsed, and if you want that, and the terms are very specific, it was for 1 year only. I don't think it's the responsibility of the county to pick up what another person had not seen as far as renewing a contract. If they really needed it, it should have come from them instead of the county going, well, here's an extra $15,000.
Ms. Wood, I see your hand was up too.
Just a more, I guess, basic question. Do we even have this money in the budget? I mean, before we talk about spending.
Well, it's not, that's what it is. It's not, we have to go to
I'm thinking-
unappropriated from the bed tax back into the
tourism.
tourism budget for this year, like 30,000.
Right, because my
That's the
understanding
right
is
way
if
to
we paid
do
it in
it.
14 but didn't do it in 15, that money would obviously not be reappropriated for 16, so I'm correct then in understanding that none of this money is actually in the tourism budget currently.
No.
And we just did all of our appropriations for the OCTAX just Friday. How is that gonna, an additional 30,000 out of our OCTAX budget appropriated over into tourism, how's that gonna?
Well, that'll come out of that, what is it, 175,
Well, my,
discretionary
yeah,
part of the money?
my recommendation would be that,
Raise your hand.
my apologies, Mr. Dickinson.
No, go ahead.
No, I stepped
No,
in,
no,
I
go ahead.
stepped in front of you. Thank you.
You know more than I do, I'll let you go.
Thank you. I know, but my recommendation,
I know.
Evelyn, would be if we were going to consider the funding, that the funding would come out of the county's allocation, and it would be transferred from the county's allocation, Mr. Chairman, to
Tourism.
to the tourism budget.
Right.
To pay for this. And that way you're continue to operate within the existing budget structure. You're not going to some pot of money called fund balance and starting to draw from that. The county's saying we consider this a priority. Mr. Gerard has, I think, stated some very excellent arguments, and so the county could make a decision to utilize the funding in that fashion.
That was my question, is where we were coming up specifically with funding. I know we've got some discretionary for the towns competitively, I just didn't know which pot we were taking it out of, so that's important to know,
Yeah,
thank you.
It'll come out of that discretionary part of that, budget that was allocated for 2016. So that's up to, Mr. Dickinson, go ahead. Your arm is getting longer.
Yeah, well, that's what I told Rachel when I sat behind her. She thought she was gonna block me out. First off, I wanna state unequivocally that I'm totally in favor of the Balloon Festival. And Dan makes a very good point in the past history. My second point is that we are elected officials to grapple with situations like this and come to an equitable solution. So, was a mistake made? Yes. That's where we start, not where we end. Somebody's made a mistake, they didn't apply for the money as they should have, they were assuming they were gonna get the money, now they've come to us, and we need to resolve that. Now, something like the Balloon Festival, I don't know, I keep pointing at Dan, something like the Balloon Festival is important to us. It's a really, really good event, it's nationally, if not internationally known, draws a lot of people, draws a lot of families, it's a big family event. It's just a great event. I think it's the second or third most valuable event to the county. So, we need to do something, and that's what we're trying to do.
And that's what we're trying to do here.
Right.
Yes, Ms. Wood, one more, and we'll,
I was gonna make a motion, I was gonna put a motion on
Okay.
the table, hopefully move us forward here a little bit. I'd make a motion that we do the contract for the $30,000 in promotional appropriated from, the fund as Mr. Conover outlined. But I would also like my resolution to include a caveat that next year, when they're applying for the 2017 funding, that they go directly through the occupancy tax process for all of the money, that we're not doing this two-pronged approach in the future. So that would be my motion.
Mr. Dickinson?
I'm gonna second that, and I'd like to say that we give Americaid 50,000 every year. It's the maximum, it's a given. So when we get that list and we're doling out the money, we skip right over that. We don't argue about whether you're getting the 50,000 or not. I think we should do something similar with the Balloon Fest. If this is what they're counting on, I think we should put it in that discretionary, fund and lock in a number for them, cause they're obviously counting on it. And we obviously wanna keep them happy. So I would second that motion and suggest that we give them what they asked for and delineate the amount. and not have this problem again.
All right, that's the second. Any questions on the second, the motion and the second? Any other questions on the whole thing? All right, all in favor? Opposed? All right,
Nay.
one opposition. Two?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
You asked if there were
Smack him.
any questions, I'm sitting next to you. I know, you asked if there were any questions on the entire procedure, not to belabor this conversation, but, you know, I understand that they're in the negative, at the end of the day with the balloon festival, and I'm not taking any credit away from what they're able to accomplish. But in the past, and maybe this has been discussed, or maybe it's part of it, I'm new to Octax, but is there some type of sunset clause? I mean, does Americade, if they're making money at the end of the day, they automatically still get that $50,000 versus someone who's losing money at the end of the day? I mean, how do we evaluate that to continue to give county funds to, or Octax funds to events that, I mean, are they making profits at the end of the day, or are they in the hole?
You know, that I didn't have privy to, but we will, I think we talked about this last month, because those things come to the attorney's office, all.
Not the accounting, I'm not referring, that's a different issue. I'm not, and I don't mean to cut you off, Gene.
That's fine.
I'm wondering about particularly the sunset
Well,
piece of it.
Well, I don't know if there's a sunset.
Mr. Chairman, since you're looking at me, I know originally the thinking behind the event funding was that they wanted to see a sunset, and I think that got lost over the years because it just didn't work out. But that had been discussed, and that may be where that's coming from.
And if I remember right, it was a 3-year, you know, back now, we're talking, you know, I'm pretty sure that I remembered something that we wanted to give people money for 3 years, and then they should be able to continue those events on their own after 3 years. And it just didn't work that way, because some years, I mean, and the other ticklish part, I think, I hope I'm not saying it wrong, it's hard to ask Americade how much money they made. You know, when you give it to
Everybody knows that.
private event, you know, entities. So that's where, you know, that's a profit that they never want to give up on what their profit is. But
Gene, a counter to that is.
Did you raise your hand first?
I've been if I raised it any more, I'd be flying. As a counter to her, Ms. Seaver's concern is that you do get a budget with every application.
Right.
And they tell you what they're budgeting and what they're budgeting for and what they have spent. Now, sometimes it's difficult to realize those numbers, as with Americade. In those instances, you have to take a leap of faith. If you come up to Lake George on Americade weekend, you'll see that a lot of people in there.
I'm not just.
So you have a chance every year to do that.
I'm just wondering if at the end of the day, when you're reviewing these proposals, or we're talking about giving one particular event that's impactful to our community, and another, you know, is one making money and one losing money. And I would think, I guess I'm a little naive in thinking, how come we don't know if we're giving our tax money, if an event's making money or losing money? And we can move this discussion to some other day, and you and I can
No,
talk.
that's a good
I'm just
discussion,
wondering.
but a lot of them don't make money. A lot of them break even. But without the bed tax money, they couldn't put it on the following year. I mean, maybe one year, and sometimes it's a good, to look at the winter we had this year. I mean, some of the events that we gave money, like the Winter Carnival, you know, you can't say they spent all that money that we gave them because it was a tough year. But they tried hard, and, you know, we can't hold it against them next year. But, yeah, I mean, it could be a discussion that comes up, and we'd have to go back and look at it. But it's been flowing pretty good. It's just when these companies come all of a sudden, and the Balloon Festival is one of the big ones that we have to do every year, like the Firemen and the Americade. And that's why we put a cap on how much we can give them, so that they know what they're going to spend it on. The little guys, the 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, it's tough to be honest, in my opinion, track them. You know, so. Yes, Ms. Wood.
I'm sorry to derail your meeting.
No,
again,
that's all right.
I do remember Supervisor Kenny at one point previously had done an analysis of the events throughout the county that were funded for their overall economic impact, because really that's to the county. Whether their private entity makes or loses money isn't so important to us as the overall economic impact in the county regarding sales tax, occupancy tax, those kind of things. So I do know there was a prioritization of the events based on their economic impact, and that was done in the past. Maybe that's something we can look back at.
Yep. Mr.
Yeah,
Dickinson.
just,
I mean,
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Connell,
I
I'm
just,
sorry.
you know, the idea of the plan that's now 2 years old, that included, 3-year funding for the Civic Center, involved the decentralization of the small activities out to the towns, and I think that in village, and that I think has worked very, very, very well. Where the county can just stay focused on, the larger events, and, you know, for example, had I known that, but for this funding, the event might not take place, it certainly would have influenced my vote at the committee level. That's why I think that's where it belongs. You know, in going forward, I think that that's where the county belongs, is focused on these large county-wide events, Americade, Balloon Festival, there are a few others, and the smaller activities, they can go to the towns, or a conglomeration of the towns, which is also taking place. So I think that your resolution, I think, was well phrased, in that that's really where the request belongs. And had we known at that moment in time, and each applicant is allowed to make a presentation at that committee meeting, and had we been made aware of that, I think, or had we known in advance, I think it would have had meaning.
All right. Well, we had a motion, we had a second, and there was one objection. So we're gonna move forward with that, because we have to keep going. We're at a time limit here. Any other discussion we can have at another time, or if we wanna meet, separate with me, and we can set up an agenda for another meeting time, I have no problem with that, okay? We were notified that the Chili Music Festival was moved to Pennsylvania. They were awarded $15,000, and the promoter wants to hold that money and freeze it right now, because he's gonna try to put something else in place of that event. Is that right, Mr. Mayor?
I don't think you necessarily have to hold it. I think he's just working on something for next year, not 2016, but 17, but I wouldn't request that you hold it.
Oh, okay, all right, then that'll go back into the fund, into that discretionary fund. If something else comes up during the year, we have that money there. Mr. Mayor, you wanna address the committee?
I'm not sure I have enough copies. I'd just like to weigh in a little bit on Mr. McDevitt's question, and on the 8.5% increase. I'm certain that some of it is because of the increase in motel rooms, but speaking to what Mr. Gerard and Tourism said, weigh in on the fact that we have two infallible ways of telling whether the Lake George region is doing better. Our wastewater treatment plant services all of the large motels in the Lake George area all the way up, including Hearthstone Park, and flows into the wastewater treatment plant this year were the highest in the last 8 years, up by more than 2.5 million gallons a month beginning in June with no rain, as you know. And the other way we tell is by parking meters, not on the main street or not on the county parking lot, because they're full every summer, but the ones way up on the back streets where no one parks during the week, they were up 42%, the largest in the last 9 years. So there were more people in town. Our water consumption was up as much as 3 million gallons a month. So if there's people in the beds, and they get up in the morning and they take the showers, it all ends up going through our meters, and that's an infallible way of telling. What I'm here today is a little history. The Occupancy Tax Committee, 2 years ago when we began the festival space, gave the village of Lake George an extra $25,000 in the event that I would book something into the festival space after the county held their annual meeting. That particular year, last year, only one event was booked after that, and we awarded that event $1,500. That's the High Peaks Electric Love Festival. There came a time also last year where the promoters were asking for additional help to publicize not a lot of them were doing well. So we went to Mannix Marketing, and she created a site for us on her newsletter. The county approved 3,000 out of that fund. And also, we needed a banner on the road to tell people what was going on at that space because we had no sign, and GA West was approved for a banner. So there is a balance of $20,275 in that fund in the village treasury. Our fiscal year ends May 31st. If we don't use it or spend it, it's going into our general fund, because most of you didn't remember that you gave it to us. So I'm here today. The occupancy tax at the same time last year decided that we would not charge the promoters that returned for this year, in that they took a gamble with us. As you know, some of them didn't make any money, but if they chose to return, we would give them credit for 2 days' fees on the festival space. But that money would come out of occupancy tax, so that the O&M account that goes to the Treasurer's Department would not be short any money. The list that I gave you today are the ones that are coming back, the ones that have been approved to use the festival space, and it comes to $19,500. My suggestion is we take it out of the money that's left with the village and pay the park O&M account for each of these organizations' fees. There'll be a balance left then of $750, and Dennis and I will find some way to spend that without Ron knowing.
That's the way we like it.
All right, everybody understand that now, what we're saying? Can I get a motion to do it? Because we only got we got to get into yours yet. Mr. Dickinson, Mr. Straub, did you second it? All right, any other questions? All in favor? I saw a hand, I'm sorry.
I just had a quick question for the mayor. Has the permanent stage been taken care of yet, or has it not?
We discussed the stage, and again, it's a very important component of it. I've gone back, we've had the promoters, these folks that are doing most of the events here, at 3 meetings down in Saratoga. I've got them all together with the designer, and we've come up with a stage, but the stage that was projected was around $700,000. We all felt that that was a little much. We're asking him to get that down, the designer, to about $500,000. Our idea would be to apply for a grant. We've been successful every time with the festival space for 50% of that, and try to get either a sponsor or try to fund it with a bond, maybe perhaps at the end of our fence. Right now we got a fence on that thing. So we would contribute $250, we'd get a grant for $250. We're hoping to be able to apply for that grant sometime this coming fall. But I need to bring back a design and plans and everything to you folks to show you. We don't have that now because we're trying to trim the cost of that stage back. But without a stage, I can tell you, we lost at least 3 or 4 of these groups. That's a tremendous expense. A stage and sound is around $4,000 to $5,000 a day. So you might imagine why some of these folks lost money last year. You probably read it in the paper. It's a lot of bucks to put out, not knowing who's going to come, just for a stage to be wheeled onto the property. So once we get that, I think we're off and running. I've got 4 groups now I'm working with, so for next year, that aren't even on here.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that report. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll move on. Privilege to the floor. Anybody real quick that needs a comment? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just thinking about the discussions here around tax, occupancy, appropriate use of funds and the like. One of the items, and I assume, Mr. Chairman, we're going to talk about today is the RFP.
That's in tourism.
That was intended,
not in
right,
tourism.
I understand, but I'm assuming we'll talk about that in tourism, or I hope we will. One of the things to keep in mind here is we're in a competitive space as well. So our occupancy tax monies and our tourism efforts are in direct competition with surrounding counties, Saratoga, Essex,
Dauphin County in Pennsylvania, the East Coast, I mean, basically you can go to the Jersey Shore to Maine. We compete in those markets. So one of the things I would caution the supervisors and the committees about is if we sit here and revel in our data today, and we don't put it in the context of what's going on everywhere else, we can lose. So the good news is it went up, the bad news is it didn't go up enough. What did Saratoga County do last year in terms of octax? Do we know? What if theirs was 12? I don't know that number, by the way. If theirs was significantly higher and we're here at 8, they won. So they're drawing guests they got to drive by Saratoga to get here, right? And if they're flying by, if they're not flying by, we have to compete with Saratoga County. We also have to compete with the Finger Lakes. We have to compete with Niagara Falls. We have to compete with the Thousand Island regions inside the state of New York. So part of the logic in terms of the RFP and how we think about octax, dollars, occupancy, the collection, and how we spend it, from the Lodging Association perspective, so I'm here representing the hoteliers in the area, is to think about it in the context of a big picture and how well are we stacking up. Specifically on occupancy, Warren County, especially weekdays, is last against our peer group. We're consistently the lowest. We're also consistently in the top 2 or 3 in rate. When you look at a peer group of Essex, Saratoga, Dauphin County, New London, Connecticut, it's the report that you all get. And so those are the worries that we have here. And then how, when you think about the occupancy tax monies and how you spend it, we talk about where it's going. We rarely talk about what did we get. So what's the return on that investment? For the big ticket items, I think there's a pretty clear understanding that Balloon Festival good, Americade good, we can tell the towns are busy, and we can also tell, importantly, that they're busy around the core tourist season, which is, I would think, is an important strategy for this county, extend the season. So we see that. What we don't see is with the balance of the funds, which I think is about 35% of the occupancy tax money, where does that money go and what's the return on it? So it's a third of $4 million that's being spent outside the tourism department and outside the county today, the county itself, that needs, to me, for all of us here to make tourism, which is the number 2 industry in this county, stronger and competitive against especially the nearby counties, understanding that return on investment is pretty important. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Motion to adjourn the octax and we'll move into tourism. All right. We have a couple of resolutions real quick that we want to go over.
So, the first resolution request is just to amend the budget for some additional matching funds that we were awarded from New York State. We applied for more and we received more, so we just have to amend our budget for that amount.
I'll move it. I'll second. Mr. Stroud, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed.
The next 3 resolutions are relative to Tanya Brand, our motor coach promoter, traveling to shows. And it's been part of the county guidelines all along, but it's just been brought to our attention that if she exceeds the GSA, then she has to come back, or any of us would have to come back to the committee to approve that difference. And sometimes it's just a few dollars, but it's for her when she's there promoting. The show takes place at a specific hotel, and there are events that take place early in the morning, late at night. She needs to mingle with, the other promoters, so there's a benefit to her being at that host hotel. So those 3 resolutions.
2, 3, and 4.
Okay, there's a motion, 2, 3, and 4. Do we get a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. All right, now the discussion on the RFP. I lost our administrator and I don't have our attorney. I talked to the attorney because I'd like to go to an executive session on that, and he also gave me permission, and he said it was legal for me to have a couple of people from the group that helped us put the RFP together, because we have to talk about that and make a decision. That's...
This resolution before you do that.
I got another resolution?
Well,
That was,
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, let me finish this, all right. Then, yeah, before we go in executive, I got one more resolution, I apologize. As you all know, that we, put Joanne, for 6 months. 6 months is flying by, and, I'd like to put forth that we keep her on another 6 months, and by then we should know what we are going to do with tourism. Keep her the same salary she's making now, and, that's in the budget with no problem, she's happy with that. And I think, right at the end of the summer, we'll have to get back into that, whether we're gonna have somebody, go out and have a tourism director or take from within. My opinion, I think it's running well, and, I think we have no problems moving forward for another 6 months with Joanne. So, Mr. Dickinson, you made a motion, Mr. Stiles, second.
Yeah.
Any other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, pass. Take that back. So now back, we're gonna have to move into executive session, and we really don't have a lot of time, yes,
Make that motion.
for the RFP, to discuss the two companies that bid on it. All right,
You're gonna need to tell them that it's to discuss the employment history of a particular, or the credit history of a particular set of individuals to make it a legal executive
okay,
session.
so, yeah,
Just to give you the wording, Gene.
that's the wording. But it's to talk about the two that we have left that, from all the RFPs that came in. Well, no, I'm talking about, Mike Consulo from the Chamber and Frank from the, Business Association.
You either have members of your body in here, or it's not executive session, you can't have outside.
I talked to our attorney last week, and he said, I can ask for those people to stay in here. I mean, I got it from him, otherwise I wouldn't,
You're accurate, you can do that.
Yeah, as chairman, I can do that. And the reason why Don, the reason why we were asking them to stay, they were here to help us write that RFP.
I was here to write about it.
Yeah. All right. A motion to go into executive session. Ms. Dickinson, Ms. Frazier, all in favor, we're in executive, but we gotta come back quick, guys, because we're a little behind schedule.
Boy, he's got it handy.
To the, we'll wait for, here they come now. All right, we're back into the tourism, committee, with major discussions, and, we're hoping we're gonna come out with the right thing. So, our proposal to make a motion on which one of the RFPs we're gonna accept. So,
I'll make a
Ms.
motion
Wood,
that
and
we award
explain
to-
it.
I'll try. I'll make a motion that we award to BB&G, and then also subsequent to that, we develop a second RFP, using the information of tourism and Julie, regarding, another RFP for more data-oriented services, and to bring that back to the committee for our review if necessary.
And basically, that should happen, we can get with BB&G, talk to them for a couple of days, and then go out with that. Is that,
Yeah, I'd like it to run concurrently, and if at all possible, have BB&G doing the things that they can do while we're waiting for the data portion.
Mr. Dickinson? I got a second from Mr. Dickinson. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? One. Rachel opposed. Okay. With nothing else coming before the tourism board, a motion is adjourned. Okay, Mr. Dickens, Ms. Wood, thank you all for your time and patience.
Yeah, you're going to.
Thank you,
Is there
sir.
any particular agenda you'd like?